Kemi Badenoch, who I thought, by the way, I should credit where credit's due, was astonishing during the budget. She is unveiling alternative grooming in gangs inquiry today after a Labour accused of dragging their feet. They bloody well have dragged their feet, and I might just throw this in. I remember some months ago interviewing a copper from Rotherham when this kicked off, maybe years ago, I can't remember, and he said, well, the reason it's taken us 8 years is we didn't want to stir up any tension locally, so, you know, blah, blah. I've always thought that the most important people in this are the young girls whose lives were completely traumatised, Chris Philp.
Yeah, well, you're exactly right. And that's why Kemi and I have worked with survivors and their families, often young, vulnerable white girls, who were targeted ruthlessly by grooming gangs of predominantly Pakistani origin men and exploited. And the point you made a second ago goes to the heart of it, because the very people who should have been protecting those vulnerable young girls, the police, the local councils, they deliberately covered up these crimes because the perpetrators were mainly of Pakistani origin, and they were more interested in so-called community relations than in protecting young girls. And the people that are responsible for that cover-up need to be brought to justice, held to account, and frankly sent to prison for what they did. Now, earlier this year, we Conservatives forced the government into announcing an inquiry. They didn't want to. They were dragged kicking and screaming. In fact, when we first suggested it in January of this year, Keir Starmer smeared Kemi and he smeared me, claiming we were part of some far-right bandwagon. And then a few months later, when faced with a vote in Parliament, he did a U-turn. But what's happened since then? And the answer is basically nothing has happened since then. The government has done nothing. It's dragged its feet. It never wanted this inquiry in the first place. And they are basically complicit in the cover-up by their failure to take any action.
Do you know, I said, when I remember this came out, and let's be perfectly honest, it is about kids. And I always try and do this as best as I can. I don't care about the colour of your skin, your religion or your creed. I do not want to live in a society, I've got 6 kids, right, where a man from wherever he comes from thinks it's okay to attack a young, innocent girl and blight her life. Something like that, whether it's 83% of them in Rotherham were British Pakistani men. There are plenty of white men that do that as well. I don't want them in my society. I think it's an absolute stain, frankly, on the establishment that this has been swept under the carpet for so long. And whatever political party puts pressure onto this, I support them, because we're talking about kids here, Chris. We're not talking about political games or trying to make sure we don't lose a seat in the Midlands because a certain community will vote for an independent Gaza-based candidate. No, no, no. This is about kids. And when I get really angry about all those do-gooders who jump up and down and they go, oh, you're being unfair to migrants. Well, you're being bloody unfair to innocent young girls, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the victims are at the centre of this. And for years and years and years, they were ignored. And even worse than that, what was happening was actively covered up. And, you know, for decades, for 10, 20 years, these young girls, some as young as just 10 years old, were attacked and raped and abused by multiple different men. And the very people that should have protected those young girls actually covered up the crimes. Now, that is absolutely disgusting. The truth needs to come out, and the people that did that need to be held to account, and the survivors need justice. So we've been working with a number of survivors and their families to get this inquiry up and running, because the government for 6 months has done nothing, and we've got to make sure this never happens again.
Completely agree.